Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth episode of the FCS podcast here in season 3. Right now, I'm joined by Tenny, and it is myself here as well. We're waiting on Drew, who will show up later in the show, and then we have our guest, who is Mason, the coach of Dixie State. We'll get right into the scores here as we are in the middle of the week. We have a lot of finals, and there's some other games that are still going on. We won't talk as much about those, and we'll start talking about the ones that have finished up and are of significance. To start us off, we won't go with the Grambling State Florida A&M, as that's a Atlantic Sun. Oh, did you want to go through that one?
Wait, what?
Oh, I thought you were booing the fact that we were going to skip over a classic A-Sun matchup.
No.
All right. Well, we're going to skip over that one. I'm sure they're going to talk about it on the A-Sun podcast, which you should tune into. I don't think it's going to be this Wednesday, but it'll be the Wednesday afterwards, and they'll go over all of those games as well. I apologize, Grambling State, as you're not even A-Sun, but you'll get talked about a little bit. Anyways, moving on, Savannah State versus Dartmouth, the second game to finish up. It was a 10-3 game. Dartmouth getting the early lead and with a first quarter touchdown, which would have been enough to win the game, as Savannah State didn't score points until the very end of the game, nailing a field goal to prevent the shutout. Dartmouth has been the best defensive team, I think, without debate. It was a defensive slugfest, Baba's choose all game, but it was still just punts and turnovers. What's your input on this game?
Well, Dartmouth had another good, not shutout, almost shutout, but very good defensive game coming off the win over Montana. But this game, I think both coaches were running like the whole game, or at least running the whole game. Because I remember Dartmouth talking about how he basically had 4 possessions and he scored on 2 of them and
ended
chewed the game. Out the end of the first of the half and end of the game. So it was obviously one of the quicker games. It was the second one to finish this week, but Dartmouth just keeping up that defensive powerhouse. Let's see if he can keep it on into the regular season or the rest of the season.
Yeah, conference play's coming up, and Dartmouth actually looks like a favorite in the tough Ivy. Speaking of the Ivy, we're going to move on to Penn versus Montana State. Penn being the number 3 team coming into the game, played a very tough, or had a very good start, scoring 14 points in the first quarter, 7 points literally as soon as the game started, running the kickback, but then no points for the next 3 quarters, ending the game 17-14. Montana State getting the narrow victory with a fourth quarter touchdown. And I'll talk about this game as I played in it. And so Penn was a very tough opponent. I didn't recognize it. At the end of the game, I looked at the box score and saw that she didn't score in any of the final 3 quarters, which really surprised me because she did have my number. I looked back and I saw that I had, I think, 3 and outs. I know there were at least 3 possessions I had in a row at the end where I didn't score. I just had to punt away pretty much as soon as I got the ball. So it was really tough, and I felt that she dominated the game. I had to kick a field goal and settle for that in the second quarter, but I still feel like Penn will be one of the teams in the Ivy, even though they're going to be 1-1 going in. They played a tough Campbell, as Tenny will attest to, and beat them by 10, and Penn is going to have every opportunity to cruise through conference play. As the Ivy is so small, they're going to be able to play each other multiple times. So they'll get to know each other, and she's very smart, so she'll take full advantage of that. Did you want to move on then? We got the next one, which is another Big Sky. Dixie versus North Alabama, my bad. 34-28 in Dixie's favor. In fact, I think we'll have Mason comment on this after during his interview. So it was a very close contest until the end. Delaware. Oh my goodness, I'm so used to seeing DSU being Delaware State. I've written it down as DSU. Dixie State was consistent for the entire game, and North Alabama kind of choked away their chance to win at the very end. But it was definitely not a definitive. It definitely wasn't a one way or the other. It was a close contest between these two teams. What's your take on that, on this game?
Yeah, it was definitely a game that a lot of people had eyes on after North Alabama just destroying Princeton last week and coming in hot as one of the new coaches. But it was a solid game. I'm looking at the score sheet now, and it looked like in the second half it was touchdowns on almost every drive. So they were kind of just trading blows there till the end, and Dixie just held on. I know you were saying that like the point differential or the differential of numbers was really close in this game.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a closely played game, and either team could have won this one, I feel like, but Dixie happened to come out on top this time around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a over all the plays. If you look at the advantage that either coach had during any play, so if it's 375 difference, that's exactly in between 750 and 0, or I guess 750 and 1. Yeah, so any discrepancy towards one way or the other, you tally all of those discrepancies up, and mostly, for the most part, it's in the thousands. Usually the diff gap gets up. I think we saw up to like 5,000 last week. This one was 12. It was 12 total, which is the closest I've ever seen in any of the weeks that I've looked at. Very close game. Very good opponents. I think that they're going to be some teams to watch out for starting conference. All right, let's move on now. We have Stony Brook versus Cal Poly. It was the new Stony Brook who owned the old Stony Brook. Uga being the coach of New Stony Brook, an MLR coach comes in, dominates the number of games, has few errors, and comes up with a 37-13 victory. It looked like it was going to be close at half. It was just 10-7 in Stony Brook's favor, but Cal Poly really biffed it, especially come the fourth quarter, letting up 3 touchdowns and giving complete control to Uga as he went on to show his prowess and number guessing. What would you have to say about this one?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It looks like there's a couple turnovers in the fourth quarter as Keough was trying to stage a comeback, but it's just a tough loss to have. But Uga is looking to be a good coach that, like you said, he knows number games well, even if he doesn't know football well. So I think he's going to be one of the teams to look out for once he learns more of the clock management and like strategy of the game. Obviously you're not going to blow people out every week. You're going to come down to a game where you need to know how to manage the clock at the end of a game. So that will be interesting to see if he ever gets into a close battle towards the end. But he has shown that he is a solid coach, beating a Cal Poly team that had a good win last week. Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, started off well. So, he's going to be ranked highly. I know rankings this early mean next to nothing, but yeah, it always feels good to be ranked high. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, this was definitely a win where he played an experienced team. I think last week was like James Madison or something like that. And we didn't really know the strength of the opponent, but we do now. And the 400 batting average really shined through. All right. Yeah. Next matchup, San Diego versus Hampton, with San Diego nearly taking it after a high-scoring affair. Zan came out on top after a crazy set of circumstances set up the final moments there. I believe that it was it was Hampton who needed to. Let me just look at the drive charts here. Yeah, so you had a punt from Zand after a do nothing drive, and that was unfortunate because it allowed Hampton to go down, drive, kick a field goal, and I believe take the lead. Yeah, 43-40.
Yeah.
And there was not much time left. I think there was maybe like a minute left or something. And Zand.
There was 52 seconds left.
Yeah, 52.
When
when all of a sudden, boom, 65 yards. Zand in territory to tie the game, I think on the 10 or something like that. And then in 2 short plays, takes it into the house. And I think time expires or something like that. Not enough time for Hampton to do anything. San Diego takes it 47-43. Wow, what a game. I think anybody who was following it could tell you that there was it had game of the year hype around it pretty much the entire way through, especially that ending though. Great opponents.
Yeah, it was definitely a great game, great finish between two playoff coaches from last year. I mean, it's always good to see 2 big teams go at it like that. Even if Hampton's now 0-2, there seems to be a lot of good playoff teams from last year that are struggling to start the year, but we've all played tough teams. Like, nobody's had an easy schedule, so somebody's got to lose the games. But it was definitely a good showing from Hampton against a great opponent in Zand.
Yeah. Those are just 2 high quality opponents. You think about it here. You have Hampton, who's now 0-2, and San Diego, who's now 2-0. San Diego beat Albany by 7, who was a new coach. And they just beat Hampton by 4. And even though Hampton is a playoff coach, it's just those narrow margins that were able to lift him to 2-0. He's undefeated. Hampton is winless, even though Hampton has played, he's played well these past 2 games, but it's just that narrow bit that has kept them, or that has placed them where they are. So if you put a lot of stock into these early coaches polls, this is a good reason to not. All right, let's move on here. We're going to move on to Campbell versus Idaho State. Yeah, I know your favorite game of the week. But yeah, despite a lot of errors, and Andy Reid-esque clock and I guess who's the Pittsburgh head coach? Mike Tomlin-esque.
Tomlin.
Yeah. Point after attempts. The Camels came out on top with a 2-point victory in a game that I think is scoregami. Either way, 32-30, quite the odd score. I guess Campbell doesn't regret those 2 points now, but what do you have to say about the game?
Well, he went for 2 points 3 times in the game and made it twice, but then didn't go for a field goal when he was at like my 25, and I think it would have scored. So, I don't know, there was some questionable play calling there, but he did come out on top. There was, I think the drive that really sealed it, or that was a pivotal point, was not my last offensive drive, but my second to last one. It started with 3.5 minutes to go, and I was driving, and I decided to start running the ball so I could take some time off the clock. And I got a big play on first down that I only got 8 yards, but if I'd passed, continued the drive going, and I ended up in a 4th and 1 in my own territory and went for it and didn't get it and gave him the ball with 2 minutes to go, and then he ended up driving down and getting inside the goal line and was trying to take as much time, and I was taking timeouts, but he ended up getting the field goal, right? Yeah, because I was up 1 at that point. I was up 30-29, and I ended up holding him and giving up the field goal, but it took too much time off the clock, and I only had 1 timeout left at that point, and even with the spread offense, I just didn't have enough time to get down the field and just ran out. It was it was a fun game. It's been a while since I've been in a close game like that came down to the wire. I, didn't really have a whole lot of close games last year outside of maybe I think the Montana game is the only one that came down to the last play last season. So
Wow.
it even though I came out on the wrong side of it, it was fun to be in a close game like that again.
Yeah. I heard you almost. Whew, I was like hoping that you would say come out on bottom, but we won't have that sound bite. All right, so that's enough of that. We'll move on here to game day, Butler versus Tennessee State. So we had Tennessee State take an L to Butler, 49-50. It was a game that was very similar to San Diego versus Hampton. The two teams went back and forth, but Butler's defense came up big late, and the double-digit scorings in the first three quarters for Butler gave them completely the edge. That's something that I've noticed in a lot of these games, is that the teams that score a lot early don't necessarily have the complete advantage, but you really prefer it because you can own the clock and play the game your way, and that tends to really help teams out. And in this case, you had Butler, who put up 30 points in the first half to Tennessee State's 22. So they had an 8-point lead going into the second half, and they were able to narrow down the scoring. Well, I guess they didn't really, because Tennessee State scored 27 in the third quarter, but it tends to help. I really prefer that. But like, that's what you say, Tenny, all the time, is that when you have the spread offense, it's way easier to score quickly, and it helps in late game situations where you're down. And then the option offense helps when you're up late and you can take time off. So yeah, like
I mean that's why I switched to the spread, because I just like, if I'm in a close game at the end or behind at the end, I like to be able to move down the field. Because I had that game against Northern Colorado last year where I was down by less than a score, and I had like 2 minutes or something like that with the option offense, and I just ran out of time. I was getting good chunks of yards, but it takes so much time, and it's great when you're ahead and you can just eat that clock away and get 3, 4, 5 yards at a time and just chew your opponent down. But it's dangerous. But it's the same thing with the spread offenses. Sometimes you got to hit a little bit closer on your numbers to get those yards, and if you don't early in the game, then you're playing from behind. So
yeah. I find it akin to Mario Kart, where if you're an option offense, you're kind of like the heavyweight who really doesn't have great handling, and their control isn't always great. But when they need to push around teams or something, own the clock late, they can really do it. And then the spread is sort of like a lightweight character who maybe can't do so much in the way of dominating it like other players, but when it comes down to it, they're quick and they're efficient. And if you can get away from teams, then you're going to have no problems. Let's move on here to your friend, the German, Southeast Missouri, defeating...
Everybody here is my friend.
Yeah, but this guy's extra your friend because he's from Germany. That was an awful accent. Deutschland, thank you. And then UC Davis, who is the former Sac State. Interesting game. UC Davis scoring in the first quarter and the fourth quarter a touchdown apiece, and then not in the middle. Southeast Missouri comes in down 17-14 in the fourth quarter, puts up 17 points to come out in the lead, a 10-point victory. Pretty crazy. I'm a big Sky fan, so this wasn't super great, but I think it's something to look at for a team like Southeast Missouri, who will be competing in a tough conference, jockeying for to position. This will be a statement win for them to point at and look at and be like, hey, I was able to compete and out of conference, beat some of the top teams. And UC Davis even said that this was his worst game, I think, or the toughest game or something that he had played.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he said something along those lines about it being his worst or hardest opponent to play.
Yeah, that is a true testament to somebody's skill when you feel like you don't have answers in a random number guessing game. I didn't follow the game too closely, so I don't have much to say unless you do, Tenny.
Yeah, I didn't follow it all that. I mean, it kind of ended quickly. Like, I already had my eye on it, and it was, a low-scoring game, and then SEMO just opened it up in the fourth quarter there. And UC Davis is another one of these teams that runs the two-option offense, and it kind of comes back to bite you when you're down late in the game and you have 2 scores to make up, and you kind of have nothing for it.
Yeah, I think that puts a damper on teams that are good, because that's the thing, is if you're playing spread, you're going to get more plays in the game, and if you're good, you should be able to take advantage of that. More plays should be good. You should be able to separate yourself. But on the other end of the spectrum, even if you have the off day, then having spread isn't going to be great. But with option, you don't have that big discrepancy. And like if you're bad, I know that who was it that we were talking to? It was some FBS coach that just chewed the whole game, and they were very adamant about it. But either way, they said they're not very good at the game, and I had to respect them this much. They're not very good at the game, but when they chew with the option, it lowers the amount of plays and the amount of things that they can do wrong in a game. So it makes that margin smaller and lessens the opportunities for their mistakes.
Yeah.
And I can see the merit in that.
I can't remember who that was, but anyway.
Yeah, so let's move on to Montana versus Morehead State, a 20-35 game in Morehead's favor. Morehead State being former Northern Colorado, which was the former team that Montana lost to first, although that was Boise head coaching that. Either way, an intense game early. I think that at half it was 21-20 in Morehead's favor, but then 14 unanswered points later, it's a 15-point game to end it. I wasn't paying a ton of attention to this one. I like following when the Big Sky teams are winning, but I'm kind of a fair weather fan in that aspect. Tenny, though, what did you take away from this one?
I mean, it was just another rough game to a tough start for the number 1 team from all of last season. I mean, I played him last season. Well, I played both of them last season, but I played Ed last season at Norco, and he's a great coach. I mean, he's kind of got an up and down track record. I think his overall record in FCFB is 4-4, but he's beaten some good teams. He seems to kind of slip up against teams he probably shouldn't lose to that nobody really knows, and then he's knocked off myself and Drew and one other, big. I can't remember who the other one is.
Well, he did beat Ewu in the playoffs, but
yeah, but that was not one of his other win. I can't remember who it is. I should have known this, but it was another fairly solid win. So he's just one of those coaches that he can beat anyone on any day, and he caught Montana when they're kind of in a bit of a slump.
Oh my goodness. He's kind of like the 2018, 2017 Seahawks, just completely playing to the level of their opponent in all respects.
Yeah.
Let's move on here. We got Princeton versus Jacksonville State, an overtime game where Jacksonville State took it 28-21. I definitely was keeping my eye on this one. I love Princeton, and all of last year he was kind of my big out-of-conference win, so I was rooting for him all year. But this time, Jacksonville State was my out-of-conference game. I did lose that game. But anyways, with my A-Sun, I'm not even in the conference, but I'll say homerism. I was rooting on the Gamecocks, and they did pull it out in overtime. It was a close game the whole way through. It's don't get me wrong. It was 14-14 at half, and 7 points for each team. Jacksonville State in the third and Princeton in the fourth brought the game to a 21-all score. I'm trying to take a peek at overtime because I didn't super watch it. It was a really quick overtime. It's just one.
Well, yeah. So this game, it was with 16 seconds left. Princeton had a 54-yard touchdown pass, which, he was desperate there at the end of the game. Jacksonville State thought he had the game won, and Princeton gets this huge touchdown to send it to overtime. And then once it went to overtime, he had a decent drive and then missed a field goal from the 10-yard line. I don't remember what. Yeah, it was a 685 diff from the from the 10-yard line. That's a chip shot basically.
That's the highest.
And
range.
then Jacksonville State got a 19-yard play on second down to take it down to the Princeton 3, and then at that point, a first and goal from the 3, it's kind of almost, not if you're going to score, but a matter of which play you're going to score on.
Yeah. Yeah, with that, it's pretty tough to it's pretty tough to do anything when you get those big diffs. That's what I'm saying. Is there's two different kinds of skills. There's the number skills and there's the game skills. You can be awful at deciding the numbers, but make great decisions in game to give yourself every opportunity, which is definitely more like me. And then you got teams that are just fantastic at numbers, but just for some reason don't super understand the game, and that's kind of where I feel like Uga might be at, and where I feel Campbell might be at. But they're the scariest teams because it's better to be lucky than be good, and if you can get those numbers and minimize your errors, which are completely learnable, you're a terrifying team, which makes Jacksonville State one of the teams that I think is truly elite. But yeah, so let's move on here. We'll hit up Northern Iowa versus Austin Peay. This one was another close game, as was kind of the theme this week. 28-24 in Austin Peay's favor. We had, oh boy, so many notifications from Chase at every little bit, either complaining or not complaining, but about the pace of the game. But it was good to see Austin Peay finish this one out, as I believe AP was on a trip of some sort. I hope he's doing well. And I'm sure he's doing at least pretty well because he took off the number 1 team in Northern Iowa. That's not something you can do, not even something you can have an opportunity to do every season. I guess we both had chances to. Those were the days. All right. But what did you see in this game? I don't know if you were following it too closely, but
I mean, I kind of followed it as much as Chase was updating us on it, and it seemed like Austin Peay kind of got like big plays here and there. Like he'd get to like a 3rd and 8 or something, and he'd give up a first down, and Austin Peay was just kind of like never went away, and then took that late lead, and then I think Northern Iowa had a turnover on his last drive, if I remember correctly. Yeah, with 2:14 left, he was at the Austin Peay 24 and threw an interception. He was in field goal range, looking good to come down and, I guess he needed a touchdown. So, he was in good position, 2 minutes to go, needed a touchdown to win the game. And throws that interception, and then just couldn't stop Austin Peay on that final drive, and he just ran the clock out. It was a great game. It was close the whole way. I don't think anybody was ever up by more than a score. But yeah, it's good to see Austin Peay get off to a great start after the abysmal season he had last year at Southern Utah, going 2-10 or it wasn't great.
It wasn't good, yeah. That's kind of interesting because I think Jags
As
is also
much as-
doing well. Those two Utah
Yeah.
boys.
Yeah, the two Utah boys that
The
combined for like 5 wins
Uh,
have 4 already this season.
yeah, that's pretty crazy. It's funny because we teased them all of like last season, because they talk a big game, but they didn't really follow it up. Now they're unfortunately might be following it up, so that's gonna be scary. But here's the interesting thing that I've noticed just with this. I feel like this, I was going to say session this week. It seems like a lot of teams that were punting away or whatever, not going for it on 4th down, would have converted if they had gone for it. I just saw a lot of teams this week being like, should have gone for it. Chase had one here on a 4th and 8. I mean, I wouldn't go for it either, but then he had a 138 difference. There's, I think there was a couple of times in my own game where I could have definitely converted, but I'd gone for the punt, which is crazy because it feels like nobody in this game punts. I can't even think of like a punting team. Like there's that's the rushing team, that's the chew team, that's the turnover team or whatever. There's no real punt team. It's sort of not in the meta. But it seemed like this week teams were not getting advantage of it, or not getting the benefit of the doubt number-wise. Did that happen in your game at all? Where somebody should have not punted, or I guess maybe should have is subjective, but...
I mean, I'm pretty aggressive when it comes to punting. Like
That's
even
true.
in my own even in my own territory, like
Yeah.
unless it's
You're right.
a long, I don't know. I always just look at the ranges and just kind of think about it. But I mean, I think since about the midway point of last season, I could probably count the number of punts I have on one hand.
That's very true. You and Haber both. I think Haber might be able to do the same thing. All right, let's move on here. We had Bryant versus Sac State, another close matchup, another game 50-49. This one in Bryant's favor. It was a very close game, and Bryant actually, I think, had the 2-point conversion in the 4th quarter. There's an 8 in the box score, so I figured that's what that is. This would be 2 FBSers, so we won't talk too much about it, but yeah, this one was like mostly Boise being in just talking about like, hey guys, I'm like I'm playing VFB and I'm not losing by a lot, or I'm winning by a little bit. I'm not getting blown out. And then it was kind of a bummer to see it all go all the way to the end, and then narrowly Bryant sweeps it out. I mean, I love VFB.
Yeah, I think at one point it was like a 2-touchdown lead, or it was at least a 2-score lead.
It was something
And
crazy.
he was definitely feeling confident, and then VFB kind of opened it up and reeled him back in.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty impressive on its own, though, I will say, considering VFB destroys teams in both subdivisions. To be able to take this to a 1-score game, that's a bit impressive, I'll say. All right, we'll move on here. We got Dayton versus Central Arkansas, and we're nearing the end of the finals here, so we'll try and speed it up, though, as we've been on this topic for about 30 minutes. We had Dayton versus Central Arkansas. Dayton took this one 38-28. After last week, I think we were all pretty certain Dayton would be a contender as well this season, but it wasn't verified because he didn't play a full game. He just made somebody rage quit, NC Central. But this week he played a team that was like all of last season one of the teams to look out for. And Central Arkansas had a very close game to Northern Arizona, which was under the guy, or which was I was coaching them, and I was a playoff team. So he's played 2 playoff teams, 2 playoff coaches so far, and hasn't come out in either of the affairs. But this game was a bit out of hand. It was a 10-point game where Vinny scored a touchdown in every quarter and nothing more. which is an oddity. But Dayton really established himself as a dominant team. What do you think about Dayton so far this season?
I mean, I think Dayton, they were one of the hot teams that end last year, knocking off Montana in the playoffs and making it to the Final Four. And he started off hot again this year. I mean, like you said last week, all he did was just make a team rage quit. But I fully expect he would have won that game as well. So he might be the number one team come this next week.
It'll be close.
We'll find out.
This is going to be fun. This ranking. I mean,
we're definitely getting to a point where the number one is more interesting, and it could be anyone any week.
See,
we went through the whole last season with the same team as number one, but I like this bit of parity at the top, at least for now.
Yeah, it makes for interesting
somebody inevitably goes on like a 6 or 7 game win streak to start the season and does the same thing as Montana last year. But I really don't think we'll see the same kind of dominance at the top as last year.
Yeah, I think the parity will really set in. But yeah, good game. I'm excited to have a bit of interest, a bit of intrigue at the top. That number one spot, as Tenny was saying, was just kind of Montana's spot. So yeah, we'll get some rotation in there. I'm hoping a Big Sky team ends up at the top, preferably me. And we're going to move on to Harvard versus Nicholls State. So after last week, everybody was like, okay, Nicholls State. Nicholls State was actually my number 26 team, but we only get a rank 25, so he just missed out. But Nicholls State was a team that I thought was going to be able to turn it around this season. They had a good game last week. They played Hampton.
Over Hampton.
Yep, and just smashed. They won by 13, a 53-40 game, lots of possessions. I think there's legitimately too many for me to count offhand here. But yeah, an intense game. They came out on top against a team that went to the playoffs last year. I was like, okay, these guys might be legit. But then they come in, Harvard says, no, I am the team that is now legit. And Harvard's what, 2-0 now? Because they were ranked this week. And so they were number 25, yeah. So this was, in my mind, would have been an evenly matched game, number 25 versus number 26. Although Nicholls, I think, only got like 6 votes or something like that. I don't know. It was, anyways. They got systematically destroyed, and I think Harvard probably is going to be not an outside shot. Is probably going to be one of the favorites to win the Ivy. We'll get to like conferences maybe a little bit later, but Harvard and the Ivy. What's your take on that?
Wait, did you die there, Danny?
Did I? Did I die there? Am I alive?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Harvard and the Ivy. What is your take on that?
I mean, I think it's going to be a tough conference to win. There's lots of solid teams, but Harvard is one of the few, maybe the only 2-0 team in the Ivy right now. I don't know who else. Dartmouth, is also a good contender. But I'm sorry, Dartmouth. But I mean, like we have Princeton and Penn and Yale, some of the heavyweights from last year that everyone was high on, have all slipped up at some point this year. Some of them have lost 2 games, and it's kind of put them on the back foot. But we still have conference play to start, so everyone's 0-0 at this point. So it's anyone's game.
Yeah.
And like you said, not to dive too much into it, but I like Harvard as one of the. I mean, maybe not like the top tier teams in the Ivy. I don't know. I'd like to see just a little bit more this season, but he's definitely a solid contender to win the Ivy League, in my opinion.
I think Harvard's up there with Butler and probably some other coaches I've forgotten. I guess Penn of last season is, hey, these are good scary coaches. Vinny in fake basketball, yeah, he's up there, which is a high accolade, and we'll see if he can, live up to those expectations. All right, let's move on here. I'll give you 3 games, and I'll let you pick one here. So we have Alabama A&M versus Houston Baptist. There's Weber State versus Yale. And then we'll avoid the ASUN for a second and do Presbyterian versus Eastern Illinois. Which of those piques your interest?
I guess we can talk about. I don't know. None of them are that interesting, but
we'll do Weber State versus Yale, just because that one has known figures on both sides.
Yeah.
So Weber State.
I mean, this was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No. Okay. All right. I guess I am the host. So Weber State takes a fat L after a 0-0 first quarter. They lose by giving up 25 points over the next. Or 28 points over the next three, and losing by 25 in a 28-3 rout. It looked close early, and Weber State seemed to have a little bit of a read, was able to play some defense, but then Yale says that he found a groove, found something in Joe's game that let him just cruise on past him, and scored on just about all the possessions he was given. So this is an interesting one. I thought Weber State might have turned around as a team and might have been able to establish themselves from bottom feeder from rags to riches, essentially. And Yale had just come off a narrow loss to MVSU. So these were two teams that had high hopes despite, I guess, really not much despite Weber, but despite MVSU game for Yale. And, Yale really established himself this game. And like we've been saying, all Ivy teams... Not all, but most Ivy teams have slipped up this season. I like having a win before conference starts. I like having a win before you have to go play the teams that you're going to be playing for the rest of the season, especially Ivy, because you're going to be playing these teams multiple times likely. Yale getting the big W here is fantastic for not only his coach's confidence, but to put the fear in the other teams, knowing that he has the capability to figure you out, for one, and two, use that to his advantage, and I think adjust, because I don't think that Joe was just going to sit in his old ways. He was going to find ways to get around what maybe his downfalls, maybe his tendencies, but Yale was able to adjust continuously and take advantage. I think that's going to be a massive advantage, or a massive thing to look out for, and good luck, Ivy. All right.
I see this as.
Go for it.
I mean, I was really high on Weber State and Joe after the first week. Knocking off Morehead State. Another solid playoff team he was a playoff team from last year at Norco.
Yeah.
And he was one of the new Big Sky teams coming in, trying to make a name for himself, and he got that good win. And then he comes up against Yale, who is one of the more solid coaches, I think, in here, and. Just like you said, he played a good first half, and it was a close game, but found something in that second half. Yale did, and just took advantage of it and pulled away in the third and fourth quarters. I mean, I like both these teams to, do something this season. It's still a long season to go, so one loss here doesn't, destroy your season yet, but. Sure. It'll be interesting to see how both these coaches do.
Definitely. I like Weber State to do something in conference. They had an easy, CAA, and then they kind of took advantage of it, and we'll see this season whether they're going to be able to, whether those were number skills or whatever, game skills. All right, let's move on. We had VMI versus Southern Utah. Another Big Sky game here with VMI. VMI was like, what, a double dipper, right? I'm pretty sure.
They both are double dippers.
Oh,
this
you're
is
right, 'cause it's
Cannibal
XRT.
versus XRT.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, actually, then we'll nix that one. I love the Big Sky. I guess I'll speak briefly. I don't want to get blue balls too much, but so Southern Utah lost to VMI 19-22. Very close game till the end. It was just 3 points for both teams in the second half, but they were able to. But VMI was able to capitalize on his explosive second quarter and use that to take the W. All right, Long Island versus Lamar. Lamar being the Lamar coach from last season, and Long Island being a double dipper. Long Island smacked Lamar. What are they? Sharks. Yeah, that's right. The Sharks cruised to a 31-7 win over the team that I picked to be the best defense in all of FCS. So I have a bit of egg on my face, but I think I'm okay. Probably doing better than Lamar is at this moment. The Redbirds were only able to muster up a touchdown in the third quarter. So we won't have to talk about this game because neither of us were following it too closely, I don't think. But speaking on teams that have early double dippers, how do you think that's going to affect either the committee or the outlook on the season as it goes on and those teams get taken?
I mean, I think it all kind of depends on how many teams do get taken, because we haven't been too successful in a lot of our recent ads. I think the most successful one in the last 6 months was when we advertised an MLR, and it seems like most of the coaches from there that wanted to come over have come over at this point. So
yeah,
as much as I'd love to have full FCS and all FCS only coaches, I think a lot of these double dippers are going to hang on to their teams for quite a while, if not the whole season. Especially since this season is basically going to be entirely played during the real season, and I feel it's easier to do ads when it's the off season or like just after the season kind of thing. Like the big ads that we had last year were both in December, when people were kind of craving that extra football and didn't want it to go away yet, and that's when a lot of people joined. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, but I have a feeling that a lot of these teams will have the same coaches towards the end of the season. But it will be interesting if, say, Bryant and Incarnate Word get taken over, after solid seasons, and they have new coaches, week 6 or 7. It'll be like Eastern Washington and Cal Poly last year, which was a nightmare, but it's just something we have to deal with.
You're right. See, I was thinking I was feeling before you mentioned the ad stuff that we would have the conference filled up, or not the conference, the subdivision filled up by the end of the season, and that these coaches would be taken, or these teams would be taken very early. But I think you're right that people are going to have that craving satisfied, especially with a bunch of new sports hitting their the end of the off season. So maybe we won't fill up, but it will be interesting to see how this shapes up in the committee this season, because last season we had a bunch of out of conference. So any teams that had double dippers, well, I guess we didn't have a double dippers those first 4 weeks or something like that. It wasn't.
Yeah,
really
we kind of implemented that like week 5 or 6 or something like that.
Yeah. So this is actually unprecedented to have a bunch of coaches that have a bunch of experience in FBS come in, coach up the teams, win games for their conference, and then perhaps get kicked. So we'll see how that pans out, and I guess you guys don't have to super worry about it because most of you probably aren't on the committee, but you'll want to keep tabs on it so that you know that we're ranking teams, not coaches. So if you beat a team that has a lot of wins, even if they're a new coach, that's just valid and that's fine. And then on the other end of the spectrum, if you face a double dipper who had their team taken and then started losing a bunch, that's also the downside to it. And you're gonna have to suck it up, Buttercup. All right. So that's most of the games that are final, that matter. All you other people suck, or you're in the ASUN and you're great. Other than that, we'll head on to our next segment. Mason, are you here? Calling all Masons.
Is he? Should we?
He's in chat. Can you talk?
I mean, he's unmuted.
Yeah. You should be able to say words. Can you say the words? If you're on mobile, it might be push to talk. I don't know. I can't see your. I mean, let me look at your roles, but I'm pretty sure that you should be set. Yeah, we're gonna do a little bit of an interview with our buddy Mason. It's gonna be kind of a Big Sky cast, I guess, now with all Big Sky guys. It's interesting, and I think I'll try and get your perspective. I know you're listening in, Mason, to what it's like switching conferences from something that's inactive. Or actually, and it's not like the America East was inactive. It's just the America East sucked. A conference that sucked for the most part to a conference that has a lot of members and is sort of known as a powerhouse. Because yeah, Tenny and I both Big Sky all the way through. I mean, we were MIAA coaches briefly, but I wouldn't really count that.
Like a week.
Yeah.
I'm still the commissioner.
That's right. All right, I'm just gonna straight up give Mason all the perms, so he should be able to.
I mean, he was unmuted. Now he's muted. Now he left.
All right, he's back, and can he speak?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do push to talk. What's up, guys? How you doing?
Hey, doing well.
Good.
So what you guys were talking about with the whole American East thing, how it went from being basically a no man's land to being the hellhole known as MLR. It's actually pretty good to see that we're having another strong conference, all things considered. I think, looking into the season before we had all these new signups, we were looking at really only 3 or 4 power conferences, and now that we have another conference that is so strong, I think that makes it a good thing for just the entire community in general. Just that way, not all the powers and the Big Sky and the Dick and the MVC and the ASUN.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what then is your take on the pushing back of out of conference games? Because that was kind of in order to help those teams that got smarter later to have opportunities to get out of conference wins.
I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. I think it was kind of, I don't know, really. I think it's kind of a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other sort of thing, where it would be kind of cool to have all your non-conference to start off with, but at the same time, it's kind of, your conference or your out of conference 4 game is oftentimes going to be a neutral site game or something like that. So it just kind of adds to the fiction of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it will help a lot come playoff time, because you have a bunch of teams that start off 0-2 and then finish their out of conference 2-2, as opposed to finishing their out of conference 0-4 because they're just through an out of conference gauntlet. I think that's a good thing, all things considered.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. I didn't think about that. We're gonna have teams that are gonna be able to take an out of conference record into their, or an in conference record a little bit into their out of conference, and that might translate to, I don't know, could be something, either fear in your opponent or the lack thereof. So what has it been like then moving on to this conference, the Big Sky, where, I mean, we haven't been really that hot this year, but your division has, the South has. So what is any differences or anything you've picked up so far?
The main thing I've noticed has been just a lot more community in the Big Sky. In the American East, whenever I was there, it was me, Kyo, Naki, and then Poet, and that's it. And even then, I was only there for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Really all that active in that chat. Whereas in the Big Sky, I mean, are always going to be talking and helping each other out and giving each other numbers whenever somebody's in a slump or something like that. And that sort of community is just really cool to be a part of. And I mean, yeah, we are starting off kind of slowly.
Yeah.
Just because you start slowly doesn't mean you finish slowly. And that's it doesn't matter how fast you're going at the beginning. It matters how fast you end the race. And hopefully we can end that race.
So
wait, first, before you speak, Tenny,
you go.
we do have the soundbite, though, of Mason wanting to end races. So that's good. All right, go for it. I wish that was a Tenny soundbite, though.
Oh God.
Oh.
So what I was gonna say is, you're coming off a big win this week over one of the hot up and coming coaches that literally invented how to play the game. How was it playing against somebody that it seemed like almost everybody was kind of rooting for you and was hoping that you would win this week? How did that feel this week?
I mean, I kind of, in a way, kind of felt like the 1980 Olympics. I was Team USA versus the Soviet Union, where it was like, "Fuck, can this guy please win?" And I mean, obviously, the guys in the dick were rooting for Matt, and I mean, Matt was a great opponent, and I knew that. I mean, because the dude literally scouts everything, like how many breaths you take a minute, what you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like literally every metric that could be scouted, he scouts. I just had to make sure I wasn't making any mistakes, and I mean, I had no turnovers, I had 2 kickoff touchdowns. I mean, it was just a really good game, and I'm really happy with how my team played, all things considered. I mean, I allowed 28 points or something like that and 370 yards, but we had crucial stops when we needed them, and I think that's really what won us the game. I mean, if you look at the stat line, I think I only had like 170 yards on like 10 plus minutes of possession, which definitely kind of inflates how the game looks, but at the end of the day, I was able to capitalize on short fields, and having an 85-yard touchdown pass as an option team is always kind of funny to experience. So, yeah.
Gotcha. So then, since you knew he was heavily scouting you, did you try and do any sort of reverse scouting or try and throw him off, or what was your mission plan with that in mind?
Honestly, with my strategy in mind on defense, it was just trying to keep him on his toes. If it was just like a 300 number drop or a 150 number add, or, just staying within the same proximity of numbers, that helps a lot. And then, going for your meme numbers once in a while to lull him into that.
Oh.
Just doing that sort of stuff.
Gotcha.
It really, I think, drew me to the win, having those, I think, fourth down stops that I had, fourth down stops I had.
Wow.
Just were able to, I think, win me the game when it comes right down to it.
So 4 fourth down stops. That's like literally Haber nightmare juice. It's just like not being able to convert on 4th downs. I wonder if you're gonna make it onto his list with Butler and co.
It'd be an honor.
That would be a good article or something like that. Just or a list that he puts out. Haber's spooky team.
His scariest team.
I'd read it. All right. Tenny, do you have any more questions?
I think I'm good for now.
Okay. So Mason, you're free to stay and chill and chat. We're gonna keep you on, as we're a little on the lean side as far as hosts go. Yeah. I don't think that Drew will make it, but that's all right. We have as of right now, if you are in the audience, we would highly encourage you to put any of your questions that you have or anything that you'd like us to talk about in the comments. We'll try and keep track of those and answer them at the end. Right now, though, I would like to go over some of the maybe not some of the games that are we'll go over all the games that are going, not all the games are going, but games that are going on right now. Sorry. So there are some interesting ones that I'd like us to take a peek at, and I know that not everyone can follow all of the ones that are going on, but 12-12 seriously helps. Primarily, and I know Brady would hate. Actually, no, I'm gonna go jokey style. Brady would be much remiss if we weren't to eloquently discuss his game, Mississippi Valley State. currently down by 9 points. It's a 25-14 game, nearing the end of the second quarter. How did he get eight of those points, Tenny? Those first 8. Do you remember?
Wait, what?
The 8 points in the first quarter. Those are delayed game.
This game started off with a delayed game for Drake, and then he all of a sudden started playing and has been playing lights out. So basically, since that point, it's a 25-6 game, and Brady has kind of been getting outplayed by a new coach, and I think the pace of play has kind of hurt him a little bit. He's just because he's at camp right now, only can play certain times of day, comes on, and the newer coach, I don't know, he's not that active. I don't even know if he's on Discord, but it has definitely been a shocker of a game to start off. There's still plenty of time to go, but I guess we're running out of time in the week. There's only 5 more days left, and it's only halfway through the second quarter. So it's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on, because MDSU is one of those teams that is, looking at a top 3 ranking possibly if they can pull this out. And this would be not a great loss to have this early in the season, I would say. He came off that big win over Yale last week and was kind of riding high, getting a good win under his belt. But we'll see how this one plays out. But it's been a rocky start so far.
Yeah. I mean, every coach started somewhere, even the best ones. So maybe Drake just got taken over by the new Dayton. Not obviously Dayton himself, but you know what I mean. It's kind of interesting to think about it. Wait, now I gotta think about it. So Jacksonville State was my first game, and that one I won by 17. I wasn't entirely sure how I did that, but it was pretty crazy. What was your first game, Tenny? That's a thinker, huh?
I don't know. I don't know. Why am I drawing a blank on this? Chase.
Really?
My first game or my first game this season?
Your first ever game.
That was a confusing question,
yes,
because your first game this season and your first game last season were both Jacksonville State.
But I didn't win this one by 17, unfortunately.
My first game was Youngstown State, and I think I beat him 48 to 7 or something. It was just a bloodbath. And
dang.
I wrote, because I had 2 blowout games, my first 2 games, and I kind of rode that high margin of victory, and everyone rated me highly the whole season because of those 2 games against coaches that are long gone. I don't even think they made it to February.
That's kind of funny that's how it starts, huh? We're just you blow out teams that suck, and then they leave, but everyone's like, hey, but they blow out teams. Yeah, I guess this might be Drake's start.
So yeah, I started off this season against a couple of real teams and showed my true colors.
That's a very positive outlook. What about you, Mason? What was your first game?
My first game was against Keo.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that must have been what? 3 months ago?
Yeah, I think it was week 10, I think was when it was last season. It was a really close game, and I think definitely that helped me going forward. Then I played Murray State in my week 13 game, whatever it was. And I won on the formality on that one, and then now, I think starting off this season I think that's definitely taught me a lot. And then also doing a crap ton of scrimmages during the off season too, has helped me as a coach be kind of to where I am at this point.
Yeah, that those close games, those close games are tough. I've played in a lot of them, and losing them sucks because you know you were this close to coming out with a win, but they are good litmus tests because you know that you're about equal to whatever team you just played. So it's good. I mean, and now, actually, full circle, you and Keo now back in the Big Sky. Huh. Okay. Well, coincidence.
Yeah, week 4. I think Cal Poly's playing in Dixie, so that's gonna be a good game.
That's gonna be that's gonna be a really good one. All right. So going back, we'll do 2 more games that are currently going on, and then we'll hit up some audience questions and close this one out. So currently, right now, South Dakota State is down by 10 against Georgetown. It's about 2 minutes left in the third quarter. South Dakota State won last week, and then the season before was North Dakota and lost pretty much every game except for beating Butler. They're in Discord now, which I think will be a big boost to them, just learning wise and everything. But yeah, losing early to Georgetown, who is... I had to look up who Georgetown is. Penguin Hunter 17. But yeah, so I'm really excited because I think that being able to be this having a new team in South Dakota State, so sort of throwing away the old of North Dakota and all the stigmatisms that come with that will be good for them. They can kind of create their own I don't know, whatever you want to call it. They'll be able to forge their own path with a new look. The unfortunate thing is losing to Georgetown, who in their last game got smacked by Bethune-Cookman. What do either of you guys think about, like, I guess probably Mason in general, because you have the new team. How do you think that influences coaches? Just at all? Do you think it doesn't influence them at, whatsoever? Is the mentality different? All that good stuff.
Personally, I think it's more of a conference reputation that you're going to. So, I mean, like, being a lowly American East coach whenever I started, whenever I played against Keo, he was kind of shocked whenever I was able to storm down the field and score a lot. Because, I mean, it's the American East. Old American East was bottom tier at best. So I think really being able to change your identity on how you are as a coach, even with just it being your team or your playbook or something like that, can really help a lot with how you perform as a coach. And I mean, yeah, Nodak went 1 in however many losses they did last year. And I mean, the fact that they've already tied their amount of wins is a testament to how they've hopefully progressed, and hopefully they'll be moving on forwards, because the more good coaches there are in the MVC, I think.
Yeah.
In the MVC, I think the better, just because, the more good coaches we have in general, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I didn't even think about that, the changing of schemes, which I'm assuming a lot of coaches did as they switched to different teams. I just saw, I'm going to take a peek here. So South Dakota State was Pro 4-3 this season. They were Pro 4-3 the last season. Okay, so they haven't changed up their schemes, but I know that obviously several of us here have. I know I tried out different schemes, and in fact, I was one of those degenerates that was switching up their schemes from game to game. I stopped pretty much halfway through the season because it was really detrimental, and I got clapped by Cal Poly after switching to spread. But it does influence a lot about how you play, and being able to switch playbooks kind of gives you a little bit of a fresh start, because you can look at all your previous failures and be like, okay, that was using different schemes, using different all that stuff. And even if you want to say, okay, but you still sucked with picking numbers, you're going to pick numbers based off of situations, and the situations change based on what schemes you're running. Tenny, I know you also switch schemes. What do you have to say about getting the opportunity to do all of that?
What, switching schemes or?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I went from, well, I ran pro offense like all of last season almost. And then I switched to option for one game and didn't like it, and then switched to spread. And I mean, I know I've said this time and time before that I just like having the opportunity to move the ball down the field. And I do kind of hate how currently it doesn't make sense to just, like, it only makes sense to like pass with the pro or with the spread and run with the option. But I don't know.
That's interesting to me, because like with the pro, it's a bit split. You know, you usually it's the rule of thumb is you're mostly run with option, you're mostly pass with spread, and with pro it's a bit of both. I don't think I've played much of pro, so I don't think that I know much of like what it's like to have options available to you. But I've heard a lot of good things about it, though. I think that's what Brady runs as well, or Chase or something, and they like to be able to have those options available to them. I'll say the one thing is I wonder, and you can feel free to answer this or not, but I wonder how schemes influence coaches as they get better or worse, because the pro might be something that you lean towards as you get better because you have those options, and if you're good at scouting or being able to decipher what plays are best in what situations, using or having both run and pass be equally available to you might be an advantage, whereas with the option or the spread, you're just stuck with that sort of, okay, I'm mostly just going to be passing, I'm mostly just going to be running, and there's not as much strategy to it. And if you don't have any takes, we do have some questions.
Yeah.
I think it's
let's
also
go to that.
kind of based on the
go ahead.
on the playbook thing, kind of how you act as a coach. Because, like, in my opinion, the way I run option is almost more of like an RPO offense as opposed to just your traditional option offense or something like that. I mean, I would pass on third downs whenever it was third and long because I feel more confident in my ability to throw down the field than I do in running the field, because I'd rather be third down and 10 and convert to first down and 10 as opposed to being third down and 10 and then to 4 and 5 or something, or fourth down and 5. Like, I mean, I know that's just a silly sort of way to look at it, but then, I mean, there are sometimes that you can convert on that and then have those absolute bombs down the field that kind of come out of nowhere and only take about 15 seconds off the clock, and that can dramatically change the tide of a game.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of that sort of stuff where little things can pile up over the course of the game that just make it sorry, I was looking through the pins and there's some good ones that make all the difference and stuff. But yeah, so let's move on to some questions. We got some good ones. Obviously, I'm going to let Tanny answer the $1 million question. Chances Jake makes playoffs without collusion?
Less than 0.
Less than 0. So negative. Okay, all right.
No, I don't
know. That was a joke question.
He's got a shot. Everyone has a chance, but Jake isn't actually collude.
No, I was gonna say I was hoping you'd say he was actually good. Anyways,
He's an upstanding commissioner or chairman that does a great job.
Go Hawks. So, most likely one big conferences. I mean, there's the obvious answers of Carolina Football Conference. There's the hot take, of course, of the Big Sky Conference. I wouldn't say we might have a one bid division. It's really early, but the Big Sky North might just be tanking themselves. What do you guys think about one bid this?
I mean, I think the Carolina and the Colonial are just based on like coach activity and how many active coaches there are probably locks for a one bid. There's some other ones like the Mid-Atlantic is off to a rough start. I know we have Howard and Hampton in there. One was a playoff team and one was the first team out. Mm-hmm. I think they were a one bid conference last year.
I
if
think
I'm
so.
not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Hampton won the championship.
I mean, those conferences are still kind of lacking active coaches and just a full conference overall. And I think that is going to hurt them down the road, just like it did last season. When you have if you have a team that's only played 7 games or 8 games, it's tougher to rank them, against a Missouri Valley team that went, 9-3 against a tough, gauntlet of a schedule
Yeah.
in their conference. It's
Yeah.
just going to be tough for those conferences to have more than one team, I think.
I think the MAC.
But I do like the
is a good
take
one.
of the Big Sky North. It was the big conference last season, or the big division last season. We had 4 playoff teams, 5
Colorado.
playoff. I don't know. We had
5.
we had we had
Norco,
5 playoff.
and the 3 of us.
Yeah.
Well, here's the
Yeah,
question,
we had
then.
5 playoff teams last year, and that's just impossible to repeat. Like, it was never going to happen, no matter how good the coaches are. Like, in a random numbers game like this, there is a bit of luck involved. I mean, just look at Montana's games last year. There was 2 or 3 games that came down to one play call that could have gone the other way, and instead of being 10-2, or what was he, 10-2 going into the playoffs, 11 or 10-3? Maybe he's
Weber and Norco
7-5. Like, it's just how close. Yeah, it just like certain plays here and there, and there's already been plays this season where could have changed games, like my game against Campbell not getting that first down and chewing down the clock, or I guess Princeton lost that game, but like there's plays like where one play can entirely change a game after 100 and some odd plays. So it's just we're all closer than it looks sometimes on paper, but yeah,
it's really interesting to see how this is shaped up.
I have a hot take. I think the American East will have 3 teams going into the playoffs, but they will all be from the Tri-State Conference or Tri-State Division.
All right, name them.
I'm gonna go with Uga.
Stony Brook,
because rank Uga 13th or 15th, just not 14th. So Uga. I think LIU looks really good, and I mean I know he's a double dipper, and I mean we want to try and have as few double dippers as possible, but even then, that it's fine. So yeah, Uga, LIU, and then hot take Albany.
All right. So some MLR guys. Sounds good. I think it'll happen. Oh, you have made VFB sad. Okay. Let's move on. Butler's question says, what teams are going under the radar that deserve more attention? And I'm actually going to pair this with Jock's question, which is how legit is new Bethune-Cookman? Who do you see leading the pack, winning the ASUN? I think Bethune-Cookman is an under the radar top team, and it seems like they're kind of over the radar because they're ranked and they've been killing teams and they talk. But even still, with all of that, I think Palo we need his take on this. Is it going to be Palo or Pilo? Because if it's going to be like Keo, then it would be Pilo, but it looks like Palo. Anyways, okay. Wait, pillow. Like someone dumb saying pillow. Yeah, but your full name is Jokal or whatever, but we're not gonna call you Jokes. All right. Anyways, I think Bethune-Cookman is a good one to look at, and it's kind of tough to tell, especially early in the season, because the teams that have beat dominant coaches like North Alabama are known, and the teams that have beat coaches that kind of have sucked are unknown. So or not that they're unknown, they're untested, I should say. The teams, oh boy, do you guys have anybody that immediately strikes you?
to find.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh.
Paper one.
Little tardy to the party, but I'm here.
I'll say Delaware. Delaware got some votes,
Yeah, me too.
and yeah, they crushed Elon, and they're beating Southern right now in the fourth quarter. Oh. Anyone else?
I'm gonna have to go with Big Sky bias and say Joe. I think I know he had a stinker this last game, but still, I think he's got a lot to prove, and he plays completely different to the rest of the Big Sky coaches, in being kind of allegedly a defensive first team. And I think that could really make some noise, especially in the Big Sky North, with all this talk about how it's going to be weaker than it was last year. I think he could kind of just crawl from the rubble and come out victorious that way with 3-point victories and stuff like that.
What was the question?
Who is a team that is going under the radar that deserves more attention?
Would it be bad if I said UC Davis? Like, even though they just lost?
No, because they
I
didn't
mean,
get
even
the
for
one
like how
vote.
highly ranked they are. Yeah, I mean, even with how highly ranked they are, they still never get the respect they deserve by any means.
I mean, he's kind of always an under the radar coach because of how inactive he is. He'll come on for 5 minutes, 1 day a week, and say a couple things, and I think that kind of plays into why he's underrated.
I'd also say like Jacksonville State. I mean, I know Danny, you're very high on him as well, and I know I play him later in the year, and I'm not looking forward to that whatsoever. But Jacksonville State, I mean, when you're talking about like some of the elite coaches in the community, their name almost never gets brought up, and yet they're one of the most consistent coaches out there. I mean, if you look at overall record, he's right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in terms of like not people thinking he's a bad coach, but I think like with how good he actually is compared to what people think he is, I don't think it's fair.
Yeah, and I'm thinking now they kind of have a triangle with Jocks beat JSU in the playoffs, then lost to Princeton in the playoffs, and now in overtime JSU gets the W over Princeton. They kind of have that triangle now, which is the only saving grace for me and Tenny after he lost to Ed. But yeah, those are some good answers. Let's move on to the next question, which I guess you kind of already answered with who is leading the pack, winning the ASUN, which we kind of already talked a lot about Jacksonville State. But is there anybody else aside from him and Bethune-Cookman that piques your interest? I know, Tenny, you follow the ASUN about as much as I do.
I mean, I just hang out on their chat because they're fun and talk a lot. I honestly think it could be anyone's game. Like, there's a lot of like new active coaches that are all about trying to get better. I mean, you have Florida A&M, who's 2-0. You have Florida A&M, Jacksonville State, and Bethune-Cookman are all 2-0, and then you have Campbell, who just came off a good win. Kennesaw, he's off to an 0-2 start, but he seems like he's active and wants to become a good coach. Samford is another good one. There's just so many good coaches in that conference, or active coaches, and I'm, of that like idea that, if you have active coaches, that are around a lot and wanting to improve, like, it's going to be a good conference. Like, that's what the Big Sky was last year with, we had active coaches from, week 2 basically on, and just had the most active conference and had big wins and coaches that were winning games. So I see the ASUN as being one of those tough conferences that's going to get a lot of bids. It might turn into an Ivy bloodbath that last season was, where they all just beat up on each other and some teams miss out, but it's going to be a fun conference to watch.
I think Florida A&M has a good chance to make a good run for that conference title.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the same team that put Jocks in a very worrisome state on their playoff hopes in the middle of last year. I think was down by like 20 or something like that. Almost came all the way back. I think we ended up losing by like 3 in their like first ever game. He seems like he's a pretty good coach. Knows what he's doing already.
So
I think I gotta go with either Stetson. I think he has like top 5 in ELO rankings right now. And he's about to be 2-0. So it's either gonna be for me Stetson or Campbell. Honestly, I think Campbell is gonna be kind of like the master Jedi to all these young Padawans. He's gonna be the one who teaches them, and also be the one who ends them too.
all right, I like that take. All right, we'll finish up on this last question here. It's been a great show so far. The question is, would you be surprised if a team with a 500 record won the conference and snuck into the playoffs? That meaning a 500 record at the end, so like 6-6 or something like that.
Would I be surprised? Yeah.
All right. Well, what odds would you give it? Because it almost happened last season.
I'd say still pretty slim.
Yeah, because I don't think it would have happened had a team bid 500 last year.
Yeah.
Because you had Montana State and Norco that made it in at 7-5. If either of those teams go 6-6 with the gauntlet of a schedule Montana State had, I just don't see them.
I'm talking conference winner.
Making. Wait, conference?
Yeah, there's no way that at large is gonna get in at 6-6. Just make the playoffs. Yeah.
A team with a.
Because Lamar had.
Oh.
No, wait.
I mean, that means that you'd have to assume that they go over 4 out of conference.
Yeah.
And then win all their conference games, but like 1 or 2 championship and still win that one.
I had to have a really.
I don't see that.
Now
there'd have to be a lot of things that have to happen for that, but at the same time, I think part of the reason why it almost happened last year is because everyone's still kind of new, learning the game a little bit. So there's a lot more like randomness involved now. I think a lot of the coaches are kind of catching on to how to play the game, catching on to how they're giving away patterns. You know, we have a guy who just invented scouting 2 weeks ago. So it's like, I mean, everyone's kind of catching up a little bit. So I think that will lead to a little less parity.
Gotcha. So you think it's less likely this season than last season?
Oh, without a doubt. I would genuinely be shocked if that happened.
All right. I don't expect any dissenting opinions unless I'm surprised. Or we have Stephen A. Smith in the chat.
I mean, I will say, in the Mid-Atlantic, you have Hampton, who's 0-2, and I don't really see any other favorites in that conference. I mean, I still think he'll finish above 500. I don't, but I mean, I could see it happening in that conference, if any. You also have Howard that's 0-1. I don't know how their game's going this week, but
yeah,
I mean,
that's a good
like I said, all those coaches, I don't think many of them left. I mean, they're probably picking up the game a lot more than what they did whenever Hampton was first here. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why he had so much success is because he was around for so long. He didn't really change much, and then he was a quick learner, so he just picked up on it. So now I think you're gonna look in that conference. Hampton obviously a lot tougher out of schedule. He actually looks really decent this year. I mean, he took Zan down to the wire, and like I think he actually surprised. Even though he's 0-2, I think he looks better than he did last year. But that conference, I think it's Hampton's to lose still. Like passively though, I would not be surprised to see someone just make a huge run in that conference and take his crown.
Although I will say we do have everyone's favorite double dipper, Penn State, last year's UNLV at St. Francis, that is 1-0, and I think winning this week.
Nope, he's tied.
You know, like as much as everyone doesn't like him, like he's a good coach, and if he stays as a double dipper for a while this season, you know, that could make some waves in that conference.
Well, see, now I'm thinking the opposite. I'm thinking he could stay in for a while, win some out of conference or whatever, and then if he gets taken mid-season, by a new coach that sucks or delays a game out of whatever, then that could be an addition to the recipe for like some of these teams that have sucked getting wins against teams like those that have good records that are going to decline, but easy wins because they're new coaches. The other thing is that you have to figure that not all of the teams are going to play games. Like, there's 12 teams in the conference, and right now there's only 10 games being played, and it looks like Wagner might not finish this game. I think they're a minute in, and it's 23-0. I'm thinking that, that's delay of games. So you might also have them.
Is Wagner going to be everyone's second best one again?
I think so. Yeah, no, I think it's going to be interesting because you have to figure who's going to have wins, because you have to have some wins to have to win your conference. What is it? It's like if there's a tie in winning percentage, it's whoever has the most wins the division or is in the lead. So that will also play into it.
Should be interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all we have here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Late Night FCS show. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you in the after party.